804-347-4656. Hello, this is Michael.
Yes, sir. This is John Daniel. How can I help you?
You said you were the special agent in charge. Is that correct?
No. I'm the special agent that is handling these calls today.
Okay, awesome. All right, good. I had been blatantly refused by the operators to speak with a badged official, and I conveyed my concerns in regards to their performance, at which they've been completely subversive with their behavior, ending all calls with me, refusing to even put me through to their boss for even a performance evaluation. How do you spell your name, Mr. Daniels?
Daniel.
Okay, and John, how do you spell that?
John.
OHN. Okay, and your badge number, please.
I'm not giving you my badge number.
You're not. Is it a lawful?
It's a security thing. So West Virginia called the place you called because of the COVID-19 thing. All these calls like yourselves have been forwarded to a call center.
Okay.
And they aren't agents, but I'm the agent on duty in Richmond today, and I'm more than welcome to listen and see what you have to say.
I had asked a couple of these agents if they were badged officials. They told me no. That's why I withheld some information in regards to their behavior after knowing that they have performance issues. Nonetheless, I would like to start off this call by letting you know, first and foremost, there are federal crimes that have been committed, and I would like to provide to you all the statutory codes and the federal codes surrounding what I'm reporting, so you have your own cheat sheet handy as I'm going through several criminal reports that I have prepared. I just want to go ahead and state that I have been a victim of a very serious crime. My property, my home, my sole domicile had been taken from me, and the matter in which it was taken was illegal in nature. So I proceeded to file criminal reports, and I've exhausted all law enforcement in the state. Our town police.
Hey, sir, where can I get an address? Where do you live?
Yeah, 1817 Chamberlain Street, Chamberlain, and that's going to be in
Lain.
Yes, and that's going to be in South Boston, Virginia.
Okay.
24592. However, this is not my.
225.
Sorry, 24592.
Okay.
This is not my home, sir. I am a victim of a crime to which my home had been taken from me, and I'm entitled by the Crime Victims' Rights Act for restitution immediately. And I have exhausted all law enforcement in the state, refusing to do their duties to take these criminal reports that I'm filing in nature seriously and doing their investigative duties to determine that I am in fact correct and that there are parties, in addition to the people involved in the direct removal of my property and theft, there are parties of law enforcement who I am naming in regards to their crimes against me. So what I would like to do to start this off with is prepare you all the violations and laws per the codes, so you can have a note to look to for a quick reference. I provided this to the state trooper, and spoke with the Lieutenant, I believe, Owen of the Virginia State Police, who picked up this information from the trooper I filed it with. He said that there's not going to be an investigation. He said that I violated the law, which merits for tow, but he could not furnish me with the law that I violated. And the law in question is everything that I'm about to furnish you that shows I'm not in violation, and he failed to do his investigative duties. So I would like to go ahead and provide these codes to you, and then proceed with the information in my criminal reports, so you can take this and begin to investigate these crimes. I am wanting to receive my property back immediately upon assessment and investigations for damages that have been procured since the malicious removal of my property. The federal codes are as follows: 18 U.S. Code 241 and 242, 1961, 2384, 31, 4, 1513, 3771. And the Virginia Code sections are as follows: 46.2-100, 46.2-1215, 18.2-95 II, 46.2-1202.1, 18.2-102, 46.2-1200.2, 18.2-29, 18.2-513, 18.2-514, 18.2-469, which is officers refusing, 19.2-11.01, 18.2-53.1, 18.2-47A, and 47C. Did you get all that?
Yeah, you did your homework.
I'm not playing, sir. I need help.
All right, tell me what. Give me. So the way this works is it's easier up front if you give me just like a quick who, what, when, where, and why, and then from there you can go into details. If you just give me a quick synopsis.
Okay. Because I got very meticulous criminal reports prepared here, and I will give you the synopsis real quick. I arrived at this property, private property in question, on or about April 2nd. Let's see. Let me see. It's April 2nd. Let me double check. April 1st. Sorry. April 1st. And with that being said,
2020.
yes, sir. I parked my RV, my home, my sole domicile, which me and my service animal were living in, on a piece of property off a city street. And this property was not marked. It was undeveloped. It was a vacant lot. I've grown up in this area, and for 34 years of my life, being not around here the whole time, but over 20 years, for at least 2 generations, this lot had been used by the general public here and there for just parking a car randomly. It's not a very populated area, but if people have visitors, that's their go-to if there's no room on the street surrounding where these people need to park. Anyway, I had parked my RV there, and it had been there for less than 24 hours. And I had been going to and from the RV to my sister's house at the address I provided to you to tend to my basic needs, do laundry, etc. I had been notified at approximately 3:30 p.m. by a neighbor, April 2nd, that my RV was towed, to which I started to investigate. I went to the property, and to my amazement, there were still private-owned trailers there. So this property owner gave them the courtesy of coming and getting their things. The property owner deemed me abandoned, not in accordance with state law, but that was his purpose for removal. He assumed it to be abandoned. Now, he did call the law enforcement. This is my former baseball coach, the property director of the property. So I'll go into detail. He did call law enforcement. That's what he told me, to file a report for abandoned property. Law enforcement responded, and then he called the tow truck company for the removal of my property from his. I had not received any notice. Nothing was tagged, and I'm not outside of the certain window to be in violation of any state laws. So with that being said, I got towed. Now, Officer Perkins, whom I believe responded to that call, for the abandoned property. The day prior, on April 1st, he had responded to me being parked on another property at which I vacated. But
which department is Officer Perkins with?
I'm sorry, the town of South Boston. That was within the jurisdiction.
Is that South Boston Police Department?
Yes, sir. Officer Perkins responded with a couple other officers to ask me to vacate another property. So with the notice, I complied. I moved. I came over near my sister's house to take care of my things. Officer Perkins on April 1st threatened my rights to free speech by threatening me with a retaliatory arrest. He wanted to arrest me for disorderly conduct while I was trying to explain to these individuals I wanted them to take a report in regards to vandalism to my property, and I had substantial evidence that shows who did it, when they did it, how it happened, to lead towards an investigation. They refused. Officer Perkins and his supervisor, Officer McGregor, for the South Boston Police Department. McGregor coerced and influenced Mr. Officer Perkins to threaten with a retaliatory arrest. He said, "You're under arrest," but did not pursue it. Now, fast forward. I know my RV was taken. I proceeded to file a criminal report with the town of South Boston Police Department. I called dispatch. I told them that I wanted a criminal report to be taken in regards to Grand Theft Auto specifically. That's just what I had off the top of my head. They told me that they won't take my report because it was illegally parked on private property. And I asked who authorized the removal, knowing that police don't have sole authorization to remove vehicles from private property. This day, Officer Perkins refused me. He actually was the responding officer. He refused me to file a criminal report to begin investigating the alleged crimes. He refused me a supervisor, and he fled the scene, to which I called back 911, and I requested a supervisor to come down, and Officer Edmonds responded. He took very light information from me, non-pursuant to any investigation. He just wanted to alleviate me and talk about it, alleging that I have to go to criminal court civil court if I would like my things back, and it's not a criminal matter. I proceeded to file a third report with another supervisor, and I forgot his name, and he proceeded to, quote, investigate, but I've never heard anything back from him. Now, the day that I was refused by law enforcement for investigative reports, I walked across this town to Mark Estes' house. Mark Estes is the director for the Halifax County Service Authority, the property on which I was parked. I had addressed Mr. Estes, who is my former baseball coach. We are completely on talking terms, grown up in the same community, etc. And I proceeded to inform him that that was my RV that was taken, how it was taken illegally in nature, and I was potentially producing a remedy to not have this move forward because of the nature of the crimes committed. I wanted to give him the option to restore my property to me without moving forward with law. And I was retaliated against, unknowing if it was him or his wife, but the police had responded to trespass me off his property while we were attempting fluid mediation. There were no cuss words, no excitement, no threats, no intimidation. It was just trying to understand how we can remedy this and working it out. So the two officers that responded to that report of disturbance or what have you was Officer Perkins and Officer Edmonds of the town of South Boston Police Department, and they trespassed me off his property, asking me to leave. I then proceeded to gather information to furnish to Mr. Donnie Ellington. He is the owner-operator of Franklin's Garage and Towing and Wrecker Service, the company that was contracted by Mark Estes for the removal of my home, my domicile, and sole property. I had devised a legal notice to which I wanted to provide to Mr. Ellington, and it was an option to retract from the crimes against me and to restore me to my property, telling him that he was in violation of state law in regards to the nature of his towing business, engaging in contracts for tow. So I delivered this notice to him, and you can quote me. This is for you, sir. And he scanned it over for a second, seeing that it was a legal notice and I was making claims. He proceeded to tell me, you know where the Highway 58 is? It's right there. Get off my property. I'm quoting him, and you can quote me next. I said, stay right there, sir. You're under arrest. And I turned around, I opened the door, and I exited the property to the adjacent property to begin to file a report with the Halifax County Sheriff's Office. I called, and about 15 minutes later, sheriffs show up. I told Donnie Ellington to stay right there, knowing that I was calling law enforcement and this was a crime. My home, my domicile, had moved jurisdictions, which would merit the Halifax County Sheriffs to begin investigating these crimes. Mr. Ellington retaliated against me, having provided notice to him with a call to law enforcement to begin to have me investigated, leading up to a retaliatory arrest for assuming duties of law enforcement. So me, as a victim of the crime protected by the Crime Victims' Rights Act, has just endured a retaliatory arrest in nature in regards, and sir, this is my second retaliatory arrest in nature for providing legal notice to people, and I have a claim, or I have information that I also want to be investigated from Colorado surrounding my time out there and all the malicious prosecutions that I've endured that never led to any convictions. So out there I had a rental matter, and I filed a notice of information to my property owner's registered address. His parents got my notices, the email, the certified and the regular mail, all the same information, served 3 different ways, as advised by somebody I was talking to. They proceeded to call the police and have me arrested for harassment, which led to the revocation of my gun rights and having me under scrutiny for a whole year. There was no evidence to uphold the justification for arrest there, just like there's no evidence to uphold the justification for arrest here. So, with these investigations, sir, I'm showing information that proves all this is not isolated, and the same criminal acts against me are occurring in other jurisdictions. Getting back on topic, I had filed the information with Mark Estes. Law enforcement came. I proceeded to file the information with Donnie Ellington for the garage. Law enforcement came. I had witnessed, in the process of waiting, Mr. Ellington flee the scene, to which he returned just before law enforcement, the sheriff, showed up. When they showed up, I was preparing to furnish them all the information surrounding the nature of these crimes to lead towards an investigation. They blew me off, taking me for a complete joke, and arrested me for assuming duties of law enforcement, committing abduction, retaliating against me, the victim, witness, and informant. So I proceeded to go to jail. I had appeared before a magistrate. This has been reckless endangerment. I had been isolated in my home per the request for the stay-at-home order. So I had quarantined myself to make sure I'm in good health, and everybody I stay away from who could potentially suscept me to a potential virus. That's why I'm claiming reckless endangerment in regards to the nature of his behavior. Now, when I spoke with the magistrate, I didn't want to offer information, do I have a job, things like that. I didn't feel that they were relevant. The magistrate informed me that I'd be staying the night in regards to meeting with the judge the next morning if I didn't furnish information and comply to these requests. So they extorted the information out of me because I did not want to risk my life any further given the nature of these crimes. I provided the information to the magistrate, and Deputy Waddell and T.C. Glass are two of four agents that had witnessed the arrest. Deputy Waddell arrested me. He proceeded to then ask the magistrate, when the magistrate was releasing me on my own recognizance, he coerced and proceeded to request the magistrate hold me, claiming that I was a nuisance. So I got out of jail, and then I proceeded to file reports with the state police. I had tried to go through the magistrate, but I had to exhaust all law enforcement in regards to felony reports, and or I had to go introduce this information to the Commonwealth Attorney. So he couldn't issue any warrants, any investigatory work without law enforcement investigating. So I called the state police, and I spoke with a Trooper Clark. Back up. I called the state police at 4:14 p.m. on last Friday, and they told me that the supervisor kicked his boots off because I requested a supervisor, telling me that he'll put his boots back on and he'll give me a call to get my address to come respond. I waited for 2 hours under the impression that they're not going to do their job because they know everybody around here, and at this point nobody wants to take a criminal report and nobody wants justice to be properly served. I had then called back 2 hours later, wondering where my phone call is to furnish an address to then receive contact to begin the file report. I was advised that the supervisor, Lieutenant Owen, I believe. I know it's Owen, I'm not sure of the title. He basically told dispatch that he didn't want to take my report given the nature of the time, and he wanted me to call back and request him on the next business day, within business hours. So I then made dispatch send me just any old Joe, and Trooper Clark responded, and I told him on the call before he arrived, I said, if you have a problem investigating your co-workers and the Brotherhood of the Thin Blue Line, and this is a conflict of interest for you, then you need pass me along to somebody who will do their job taking investigative reports in regards to the crime that I'm alleging that has unfolded. So I called back Monday, yesterday, and I had spoke with Trooper Owen. He is, I think he's a lieutenant, he's the supervisor. He told me that there would be no investigation in regards to this matter because I was parked illegally, and they towed me in accordance with the law. Now, he's blowing smoke and he's not talking law because everything that I furnished you and all the information that I furnished, being there for less than 24 hours not being notified, shows that I'm well within the law, and all the code that he would have needed to research to determine I was in violation is exactly the code that all those parties are liable for because of the nature of the crimes and me being not notified and well within my rights so far up to date. I had just sent Tracy Quackenbush scans of the documents that I would like to read off of to you, and I sent her all this information, so this has hit her desk, or email, so to say. I have yet to upload all this information to my criminal case file because, like I said, they took my primary method of transportation, my home and my domicile, from me. I am inconvenienced in getting across this county right now to begin to upload this with the clerk of the court. I had reached out to the FBI several times initially, and they wanted to be subversive with their behavior as operators, claiming that I need to take these felony reports to civil court. And I'm sorry, sir. That is very, very unprofessional. And I didn't get the codes of the first couple agents who've created my file within the systems. But today I called in 4 times, and I spoke with operator 9071, 9040, 9092, and 9254. As I proceeded through these 4 operators in that order, I proceeded to change my call up in regards to concerns. I addressed with 9092 how the operators are failing to do their duties, taking the criminal information and claiming I need to go to civil court with it, refusing to put me through to an agent. 9254, I proceeded to then call in, and instead of report on crime, I wanted to speak with a supervisor in regards to performance of these individuals. Once again, just like every other operator, I have been hung up on. Straight hung up on. And before you called me, I don't know as far as chain of command goes. I'm doing a lot of work here and studying and researching every day. It's been over 2 weeks now that these crimes have been committed against me, and they're spiraling out of control in nature. I want to be restored with my property. I want this to be investigated. Before you called me, I was just about to pick up the phone and call a U.S. Marshal.
Alright. Yeah, that sucks, man. I'm sorry.
I appreciate your concern and apology in nature. I do, because nobody has been empathetic in regards to this concern. But go ahead.
Alright, so, before I can file my report, I need to get some basic information. What's your full name?
My name is Michael, Michael. Middle name Thomas, Thomas. Last name Raposo, Raposo. That's R as in Roger, A as in Alpha, P as in Paul, O as in Oscar, S as in Sam, O as in Oscar.
Okay.
With 9/22/85. That's September 22nd, 1985.
Social Security number?
Is that pertinent?
Yeah, it helps. I mean, every American has a Social Security number.
Yeah,
Think about the FBI.
I don't want to.
Huge organization.
I don't want to butcher this. I lost my card with my wallet years ago, and given the nature of a lifestyle and not having a physical address of my own, I haven't been able to process certain things. I just had my license taken from me the other day. I'm ineligible for licensing through the Department of Motor Vehicles. And in regards to this, I need you to take this information as well. I had went to the Department of Motor Vehicles to address the address change on my license. The address that I provided to you today was on my license, and it was my sister's address, and I know she was going to undergo a move, and I didn't want to have a mess with mail, and I didn't want to inconvenience her. So I went to the DMV to provide information to them in regards to my license and ID and addressing. I told the manager, Lisa, of the branch in South Boston, Virginia, that I did not want to commit address fraud, but I did want to be respected under the 14th Amendment, to be treated equally and fairly. I told her that I do not have an address, and I do not consent to fraud in falsifying any documentation that would have me furnish an address that doesn't belong to me. Knowing on these forms there is no box to check that claims that is a mailing address, you do not have a physical, and this is temporary. There are no boxes on these forms. So I didn't want to violate a law. Lisa went to the back trying to help me and came out, and I have evidence of this crime in my RV. I have current legal documents with an open case file, so I do have legal information in there that should not be open for view to the general public. Lisa gave me 5 pages of addresses to freely pick and choose from, meaning they were shelter addresses, soup kitchen addresses. Now, these are addresses that aren't my home. So I told Lisa, I said, look, you just told me to pick an address off these pages, right? She said, yeah. I said, well, I just told you that I do not consent to fraud through threats of coercion. I'm not going to be coerced to commit fraud and falsify information just to squeak through the system. So I then proceeded to make Vivian, the assistant secretary to the commissioner of the DMV, aware in regards to the crime that I was reporting. I did file a complaint with the DMV. Vivian told me that it is their she didn't. I'm gonna quote her policy, but it is an unspoken policy, unenforceable by law, that they are to provide me addresses to use. So I called one of the local addresses just to inquire if they knew that the DMV was furnishing homeless people their address to use on documentation for licensing without permission. Come to find out, I called the Tri-River Community Action Agency, and they told me they had no idea that the DMV is furnishing me their address to use for residential purposes. So I did send Vivian a notice the other day as I proceeded to call her and inform her that I am attempting to follow up in regards, because when I was arrested, over the radio I heard that I have a currently active concealed carry permit, but I heard that I was ineligible for licensing, which blew my mind. But at the same time, I have not been since then able to log in to the Department of Motor Vehicles portal, and I have been lawfully following the rules of the road, driving since then, going unnotified that they revoked my licensing in regards of this matter of addressing and me attempting to be treated equally and fairly. They've scrubbed my account completely. So the Deputy Waddell took my license from me the other day. So I, in addition to not having a physical card, I believe I do have my birth certificate on me. However, my driver's license is gone. And I do recall the number of the license, which you may be used to look me up. The reason why I spawned off with this information is because you asked for my social security number. And I think I'm a number off, and I don't want to get that wrong. So what was on my driver's license number was T as in Tom 62-20-5834. So that
5834.
T62205834. And it should have been eligible. Go ahead.
The address you gave me initially, that's your sister's home? What's your sister's name?
Michelle. Michele.
What's her last name?
Hash, Hash. I had been trying to keep her up to date with what's going on. She's not versed in law, and it's kind of overwhelming for her. When I had went to court, I had stood before the judge on my first appearance the day after my arrest with a ton of criminal reports and information, and the judge refused me to submit it to the court, and he refused me a motion for summary judgment because all this information I'm submitting, I would hope, proves my innocence. So he scheduled my court date out over 60 days, denying me the motion for immediate summary judgment, thus keeping me intertwined in the court system. I had informed my sister of this matter, and I told her that I need to give her a cue, so to say, a write-up, so she can call the FBI if I don't come home that day. I was more than prepared to go to jail if the judge was malicious with his intent. And given that first phone call, I was going to call 911 and request an agent from our local field office to be dispatched to take these criminal reports.
Hey Michael, how can you get did they tell you how you can get your RV back from Franklin Franklin Garage and Towing.
Yeah, with that being said, because the cops don't investigate here, Franklin's Garage committed a violation of a racketeering law, attempting to extort me when I have no lawful contract with him. He attempted to charge me a $125 wrecker fee, in addition to $25 a day for storage. I did speak with Mark Estes that day. I told you I began to file these reports, and I walked across town to speak with him. Like I said, he's my former baseball coach for years.
What position do you play?
I moved around. Catcher, left field, right field, first base, third base.
Was he your high school coach?
Nah, this was Dixie Youth, man. I was,
Oh, okay, I got you.
yeah.
Okay.
But with that being said, I had already reached out to the FBI a couple times, to which they had wanted to send me to civil court with all this information. And I never bridged the gap until today with an agent. And as it progressed with the calls to these operators, I felt really insecure with their performance. And knowing that they wanted to tell me that it was a civil matter when I have felonious criminal information regarding federal crimes that I'm presenting or trying to present, they cut me off. Oh, well, it got taken. You got to go to civil court. And, you know, that was wrong for them to do that. So, if you have a couple more questions, I would encourage you to go ahead. I would like to provide a readout from these reports that I have processed.
Well, who did you process these reports with? Like, is this something you wrote up yourself?
Yes, sir. As given the right by the Constitution, I am acting private attorney general, performing my own investigations, man. And as you can tell, I'm studying and I'm trying to make sure that I'm on top of this matter because, as stated before, I've been a victim of malicious prosecutions in another state. And even this state prior 11 years ago by the Halifax County Sheriff's Office. So with that being said, sorry, go ahead.
You said you had a service dog? What happened?
I have endured 3 false arrests. This being the 3rd time he had been taken from me. I had proceeded to go to court that morning, and when I left court, a buddy took me to the animal shelter, and for the first time in our history of false arrests, they willfully released my dog to me, claiming that he was one of a kind coming in there. And they were proud to do so without attempting to charge me, further making it impossible for me to retrieve my possessions and etc.
But how did you get? Are you disabled? How did you get a service dog?
I don't want to get involved with all that, sir. I don't want to get involved in medical stuff right now.
Okay, but you're not a veteran or anything like that.
No, sir, I'm not a veteran.
Oh, okay. When you said service dog, that's what I thought. So
yes,
he associated with a medical thing.
He is of service. Yes, that is correct. Yeah. However, in service and always in active training. He's appeared with me in court several times in Colorado in regards to malicious prosecutions. I've had numerous unlawful detainments by officers who wanted to investigate me through my service animal, always introducing some form of investigation about failing to maintain a rabies vaccination, seemingly that I was in violation of a law, to which I'd request supervisors and they'd scatter afterwards, leaving me alone. I have information in regards to this claim. I've recorded documentation and reached out to Internal Affairs Officer Whiten with the Boulder, the City of Boulder Police Department in Boulder, Colorado. And I've provided documentation of one of these detainments by officers, showing that these officers were violating the law, tampering with evidence during an active investigation. So what these officers did was, while they were investigating me for alleged crimes, supervisor came on scene. As one officer steps aside to go talk to the other supervisor, he mutes his body camera to co-conspire. The supervisor mutes his body camera, to which I say on film, "Excuse me, guys, are you tampering with a video recording device during an active investigation, obstructing justice?" And they looked at me like I was a ghost, and they went back to conversing off the record. And then they came back and said, "You know what, you're free to leave." And I said, "Well, I had been standing here all night, well within my rights. You're free to go." To which they decided they wanted to hang out with me. And I'd produced this information of the video footage pointing Officer Whiten of the Internal Affairs Department to the exact minute marker in the video where these officers obstructed justice, tampering with video recording devices, and tampering with the investigation. So he did a investigation, so to say, and he determined that no law had been broken. And I want to add this information to all this report to show that these incidences are not isolated, and these same crimes against me are occurring in different states.
Right. Hey, Michael, where are you living if you don't have your RV?
It is a temporary arrangement right now. That's
Your sister?
yes, that's the best I can make of it.
Okay. So if you pay the fees, you could get your RV, but do you not have the money to pay for those?
It's not that, sir. With the statutory codes that I provided to you, and my testimony of time, given the nature of the property and no notice being provided, I am not obligated to introduce myself into an illegal contract that involves racketeering. So there is a crime of racketeering that is occurring on behalf of an owner-operator of a business. And if I did proceed to give him money, if I did get money, and I'm sure I could, it's all over the place, but if I went ahead and paid him for my property, I would be relinquishing my rights for several things.
Okay. Well, hey, Michael, if you could just listen to me for a second.
Yes, sir.
So we're in our country, we're in a very stressful time. Everybody's stressed out. But say the roles were reversed and someone parked an RV on your property and you called the police to have it removed. Do you think the police, or not the police, but call a tow truck to remove it? Do you think that would be fair if it was your property?
Well, let me back up and reiterate.
If somebody parked an RV on your front yard or something, or like if you had like some hunting ground or something, somebody parked an RV and didn't ask you permission. I understand you said it's a commonly accepted place for people to park things.
So it's been open to the public.
Yeah, I know, but still, I mean, just if the roles were reversed and you had some property, and
let me tell you,
and then they towed it, the paying the towing fee, that seems reasonable to me that they would charge the towing fee to the person who owned the thing that was removed.
So
I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I get it.
Because
so let me answer your question. I would look up the law surrounding removal of abandoned property on private property.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do. That would be the first step.
You looked it up. I mean, what does the Virginia law say?
Okay. All right. So here I would like to get involved in my investigative reports, so that way I can clarify all the statutes that I have given you that are surrounding the crimes against me.
Okay.
This is criminal report number 1 here. On or about April 1st, 2020, I had parked my sole primary dwelling in essential transportation while in quarantine, voluntary quarantine, mind you, which was my private vehicle being operated in a private capacity along the public easement of Riley Avenue on the corner of Vaughn alongside Highway 360 on the edge of a vacant lot. This property was neither legally posted, nor were there any property boundary markers whatsoever. There were no trespassing signs posted. I arrived at approximately 3:30 p.m. on or about April 1st, and it was gone by 3:30 p.m. on or about April 2nd, with no notice or contact with any alleged property owner while I was tending to my basic needs. So, me owning the property, nobody notified me.
Do you have any other cell phone number besides the one that you provided that I'm calling you on?
No, sir. I have, under Virginia Code 46.2-1215, a private property owner may not tow a suspected vehicle of being abandoned on their property that has been there for less than 72 hours without notice. My domicile and vehicle had been there for approximately less than 24 hours. A witness notified me sometime around 3 p.m. that it had been towed, and I proceeded to make that criminal report as stated. I reported to the director's address, Mark Estes, at approximately 7 p.m. that night, where I gave him that
property owner.
The director of the property.
Okay, yeah.
He was the one who...
So he manages it?
Exactly. He informed me when I reported to him that he engaged in a contract with Donnie Ellington of Franklin's Garage on the grounds he would pay the fee if it's not claimed. Or, if I do claim it, I'm liable. So...
That's what Mr. Estes said.
That's what Estes told me. He engaged in a private contract with Donnie Ellington.
He's your old ball coach.
Yeah. So I gave that notice verbally, and that he deprived me of my right to reasonable notice to vacate his property, and had not allowed the 72 hours to expire pursuant to that code, and the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution, and in fact violated my Fourth Amendment right to security and persons of property. In violation of Virginia Code 18.2-95II and 18.2-102, I requested he return my vehicle to me and inspect it for damages. He responded by cajoling me and treating me with indignity. At that time, Officer Perkins and Supervisor Edmonds came and responded, and I vacated the property without argument. Now, the director informed me, Mark, he engaged in that contract unlawfully to seize my vehicle. Further, Virginia Code Section 46.2-1200.2 clearly states a minimum of 48 hours to expire for a vehicle to be considered abandoned. Virginia Code 46.2-1202.1 clearly states that a person in possession of an abandoned motor vehicle shall obtain from the department a removal certificate. I requested Mark Estes and Officer Perkins and Supervisor Edmonds documentary evidence of the vehicle removal certificate regarding the removal of my vehicle or any incident report, and Mr. Estes informed me he first called the police, then Franklin's Towing, and Officer Perkins informed me that there was no official record of the seizure of my vehicle. Now, this is the same officer that I told you threatened my right to free speech with a retaliatory arrest the other day. He said, "You're under arrest." He was about to pull the cuffs out and stopped, and he was encouraged by an Officer McGregor. Now, Mr. Estes admitted to me that he violated Virginia Code Section 18.2-29, wherefore Mr. Estes solicited Mr. Donnie Ellington of Franklin's Garage to unlawfully seize my property. That is the first criminal report that I have for you, and that is in regards to Mark Estes' crime against me.
Okay.
The next one is in regards to Mr. Ellington.
Okay.
All right. On or about that given date, April 2nd, Donnie Ellington of Franklin's Garage engaged in unlawful contract to violate Virginia Section Code 18.2-102 in concert with Mr. Mark Estes at the Halifax County Service Authority, whom is the executive director. The address for this is 2529 Houghton Avenue, Houghton Avenue, South Boston, Virginia 24592. On that day, Mr. Ellington seized unlawfully my sole primary dwelling, sole essential transportation, and all of my basic needs, which was my vehicle that I was living in, which is a 1976 Dodge Sportsman, without having requested a vehicle removal certificate from Mr. Estes in violation of Virginia Code 46.2-1202.1, and without having established from Mr. Estes that the 48 nor the 72-hour minimum time that a vehicle may be deemed abandoned and subject to removal from private property, commencing under the codes 46.2-1200.2 and 46.2-1215. Mr. Ellington admitted to me he was solicited by Mr. Estes as a bad actor. Mr. Ellington's willful blindness and purposeful avoidance of Mr. Estes's evidence of Mr. Estes's lawful authority to seize and remove my property is a violation of Model Penal Code, Article 2, Section 2.02, regarding the culpable mental status, in that Mr. Donnie Ellington did not request Mr. Estes's authority and ignored a clearly posted sign in my vehicle's window that clearly stated my vehicle was my sole primary dwelling and private property that was being used for quarantine, and it claimed no trespassing. Both Mr. Ellington and Mr. Estes, in their unlawful taking of my basic essential needs and property, after having ignored the clearly posted sign in my vehicle's window, did violate Model Penal Code Section 211.2, reckless endangerment. In addition, they took it, my vehicle that I was living in, and it did violate Virginia Code Section 18.2-514 and 513, wherefore Mr. Ellington held my private property for ransom for the wrecker fee. Mr. Ellington and accessory before the fact, Mark Estes, I notified Mr. Ellington I was indignant and incapable of paying any ransom. Mr. Ellington ignored and persisted in his criminal scheme, which left me in peril and would be shocking to the conscience of any common sense person. That is, and wrapping this one up with Mr. Ellington. On April 7th, I, Michael Raposo, went to Franklin's Garage and Wrecker Service to serve legal notice to Mr. Donnie Ellington, the company's director, and to recover my vehicle and sole primary dwelling that had been unlawfully detained by Mr. Ellington. I delivered written legal notice to Mr. Ellington, informing him that his actions in concert with Mr. Mark Estes was in violation of criminal codes. I offered Mr. Ellington reasonable notice and opportunity to retract from the crimes by returning my vehicle immediately without condition that was my primary dwelling. Mr. Ellington read the notice, became irritated, and asked me to leave the property without returning my property to me and restoring me and my service animal to our home, and then proceeded to retaliate against me. I informed Mr. Ellington that he could be placed under arrest for felony within view, and I instructed him not to go anywhere, telling him he was under arrest, and I obliged per his request to vacate the property. I left without delay or argument. I proceeded off of the property, and I called Halifax County Sheriff's Dispatch to make a criminal report against Mr. Ellington and Mr. Estes. I did tell Mr. Ellington to stay put, and I did observe him flee the scene, talking on a cell phone, driving a wrecker. Approximately 15 minutes later, 4 sheriff's deputies appeared on the scene. Mr. Ellington had returned on the scene just before the sheriffs arrived. I proceeded to communicate with Deputy Waddell and T.C. Glass with the Halifax County Sheriff's Department to file a criminal report against Mr. Ellington and Mr. Estes for violations of Penal Code of Virginia and violations of the RICO Act and the Crime Victims' Rights Act and the KKK Act. Deputy Waddell responded to my allegations with willful blindness to my allegations, misprisoned felony information in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 4, and assisted Mr. Ellington in escaping arrest in violation of Virginia Code 18.2-469. And I have two more.
All
right. You want me to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay. So this is the conspiracy to retaliate against a victim, witness, and informant. On or about April 7th, 2020, following legal notice to Mr. Ellington that he was in violations of criminal codes, I attempted to file a criminal report with Halifax County Sheriff Deputy Waddell. Mr. Ellington and Mr. Waddell and three unknown, T.C. Glass and two other unknown sheriffs, deputies, acted in concert in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 241 and retaliated against me, Michael Raposo, where I'm the victim, witness, and informant of a crime in violation of Code 18 U.S. Code Section 1513, where Officer Waddell abused his office and discretion to commit the retaliation against me in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 242. Wherefore, Mr. Donnie Ellington's suspected to have solicited Deputy Waddell to rescue Mr. Ellington and assist Mr. Ellington in shielding himself from prosecution from other crimes against me, which I have been previously attempting to report, and that I had reported to Mr. Waddell, and wherefore Mr. Ellington is suspected to have solicited Mr. Waddell to retaliate against me under color of law. Wherefore Mr. Waddell did so retaliate against me by denial of my rights as a victim, witness, and informant of a crime in violation of Virginia Section Code 19.2-11.01 and 18 U.S. Code Section 3771. Wherefore Officer Waddell failed to provide me reasonable protection from Mr. Ellington, deprived me of my right to be heard, deprived me of the right to full and timely restitution, and ignoring my constitutional right that has been upheld by the Supreme Court to make arrest without warrant for felony within view, pursuant to Kurtz v. Moffitt, 115 U.S. 487 and 504. Waddell having made false statements in record to initiate a malicious prosecution against me, wherefore agents of the Democratic and Republican parties have via statutory system subversion unlawfully abrogated the citizen's right and duty to make arrest without warrant for felony within view, wherefore agents of the blue line of silence may retaliate against a private citizen making a citizen's arrest or another agent of or for the blue line of silence or another criminal agency. Mr. Ellington submitted my legal notice to him, and Mr. Waddell fraudulently used my reasonable notice to Mr. Ellington and my testimony that I had executed a warrantless arrest of Mr. Ellington for Mr. Ellington's felony within view, and Mr. Waddell and his armed mob of deputies in Halifax County proceeded to commit aggravated assault with firearms within view in violation of Virginia Code 18.2-53.1. I was abducted from my location against my will in violation of Virginia Code Section 18.2-47A. Virginia Code Section 18.2-47C does not grant Mr. Waddell or his accomplices qualified immunity. In that retaliation against a victim, witness, or informant, it is not a codified duty he is authorized to perform under color of law. Mr. Waddell assaulted my persons and shackled me and falsely imprisoned me in the back of his vehicle, abducting me away to his agency's building, where I was held against my will and initiated today's malicious prosecution against me. And this is the second to the last one. On or about April 2nd, I proceeded to file a report of theft of my vehicle and sole primary dwelling to one Officer Perkins in the South Boston Police Department at 1817 Chamberlain Street at approximately 4:30 p.m. When Perkins arrived, I delivered information of felonious crime to Officer Perkins against Mark Estes and Donnie Ellington for auto theft of my sole primary dwelling and domicile and deprivation of due process. I requested documentary evidence of Donnie Ellington having seized and towed my vehicle and sole primary dwelling. Officer Perkins indicated neither Estes nor Ellington provided any evidence of alleged authority to seize or remove my vehicle dwelling to South Boston Police Department. Perkins stated that he had knowledge of my vehicle and home having been towed, and also indicated that no incident report was made, no certificate of tow produced. When Estes notified police of his intent to remove the vehicle from unposted private property, there was no certificate, no incident report number, no record. So then Perkins then refused to take a criminal report from me in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 4 and Virginia Code 18.2-469. I requested Perkins' supervisor on scene, which was Edmonds. Officer Perkins refused to contact his supervisor. I informed Perkins that he was depriving my rights of due process and equal protection. He fled the scene and willfully failed to perform his administrative duties. There is one last one, and it's going to seem like it's off topic, but I want to go ahead and proceed reporting these crimes because they are tied into this in nature. And I've already prepared, like I said, motions for summary judgment, motions for immediate injunction for reliefs, etc. But I haven't had my court date yet, so to say. And meanwhile, while I'm trying to report this, there's supposed to be an officer that's supposed to look at this and be like, well, he's right, because, well, I know the law now, and they're supposed to go investigate. Upon investigation, they're going to ask Mr. Ellington, do you have his property? And if he says yes, it is the officer's job under the Crime Victims' Rights Act to immediately restore me to my property, so I shouldn't have to pay for this. With that being said, on an unknown date, agents for the private organizations known as the Republican Party and Democratic Party, who are lawmakers for the state of Virginia, abused their offices and discretion to discriminate against poor, nomadic, and private class citizens, to interfere in civil rights and deprive those rights under color of law in violation of 18 U.S. Codes 241 and 242. Wherefore, these criminal agents changed the definitions of the words motor vehicle from a vehicle used for commercial purposes to all self-propelled engines for the purpose of soliciting agents for the blue line of silence to carry out extortion in violation of 18 U.S. Code 1961 under color of law. Agents for the blue line of silence may be recognized by: number 1, misprison of felony. 2, deprivation of rights under color of law. 3, official oppression. 4, activity subversive to the U.S. Constitution and Federal Code. 5, threatening and intimidating or coercing victims, witnesses, or informants of crimes, especially colorable crimes. 6, retaliation against victims, witnesses, and informants of crime, especially colorable crime. 7, they hold public offices, especially law enforcement and judiciary offices. 8, they may be agents for the organizations named herein, whether by implicit, expressed, tacit, or implied contract. 9, they make contracts to other entities and assist them in their subversive and criminal activity under color of law. 10, abrogating or outlawing the citizen's right and duty to arrest felonious crime without warrant for felony within view. So, purposeful admission, concealment, and misrepresentation of the law for the purposes of subverting the Constitution and lawful authority of the United States is seditious activity. For the purposes of overthrow and extortion under color of law. Discriminatory against private and nomadic class citizens commencing under U.S. Code 18, Section 242 and 2384. Statutory system subversion and all subversive activity that affects information systems belonging to the United States is recognized by the Space and Naval Systems Command as a national security threat and a form of information warfare. These unknown agents, acting as lawmakers, have unlawfully authorized agents for the private organization known as the Blue Line of Silence to unlawfully seize private sole primary dwellings, private vehicles, and basic essential needs from private citizens conducting these items in a private capacity on public thoroughfares in violation of the Fourth Amendment and without requiring law enforcement officials to verify the private or commercial use of the vehicle, and without a hearing before a magistrate before such seizure and reckless endangerment in violation of the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution. In the Virginia Vehicle Code, the agents for the private organizations known as the Democratic and Republican Party have abused their offices and discretion to create a subversion incubator, wherefore Virginia statutes have been converted to artifices of subversion and solicitation to agents of the Blue Line of Silence to deprive rights under color of law and escape prosecution. The unknown agents further abuse their offices and have granted unlawful, unconstitutional qualified immunity for having carried out these offenses to agents for the Blue Line of Silence. I want to give to you Exhibit A, 18 U.S. Code Section 31, and Exhibit B, Virginia Code Section 46.2-100, the definition of a motor vehicle. In addition to Exhibit C, Virginia Vehicle Codes regarding licensing, permitting, towing, registering, and insuring private vehicles. Now, sir, this is tying into another report that I didn't formalize in regards to the DMV. So I will be preparing reports with information regarding the two troopers, in addition to reports against Lisa, the manager of the DMV, Vivian, the secretary to the commissioner of the DMV, and putting them on notice as well. That is all the well, hold on. This is the report number for the state police, the only report number I've been given in regards to me trying to file a report. It's going to be 3, D as in David, I as in Indigo, V as in Victor, 32 00 23 488. Once again, that's 3, David, Indigo, Victor, 32 00 23488, and that is 488. I'm gonna read it one more time. 3 DIV 3200 23488. And like a,
you've done a really good job of writing everything out. When is your court date? You said 60 days.
For this crime against me, the retaliatory arrest and the malicious prosecution is July 28th at 9 a.m. I have requested a public defender. One has been provided to me. I have called her, left her a note, and given the nature of the time right now, I'm going to be following up with her. I told her that I hired her to work in conjunction with me, not just for me. I have fired a public defender in the past who's conspired to not do his duties for me, and I have information in regards to this too, to which I will be shortly thereafter from this time filing more reports to be taken in regards to the crimes against me out in Colorado.
When is that in Halifax County Court?
This is, yes sir, General District.
Right. I can tell that you did a good job putting all this together, and you've got it all clearly laid out.
Thank you. It means a lot.
I'll write up a report on my end, and I'll submit it. But I tell everyone that calls in these type of complaints, and that being the FBI, we have to prioritize what we investigate.
Elaborate, please.
I just got here, and I've listened to you for 45 minutes, and I know you don't want to hear it, but I think your court date and then maybe civil filings, but that costs money, and I can't give you any legal advice.
Oh no, please don't.
It's probably going to be your best route, but all I can do at this moment is write up our discussion.
Okay.
And put it in the file, but I can't promise you that somebody's going to investigate this.
Let me ask a question real quick.
Yeah.
So you said you can't promise somebody will investigate the alleged federal crimes that I'm reporting on. Now, in regards to that claim that you just stated, it needs to be investigated because by law, under the Crimes Victims' Rights Act, like I said, the moment you ask that party, do you have his property? And how did you tow it? How did you procure it? Was there notice given to him, etc.? Everything that I've made my claims on would further substantiate that if he says he has my property, law enforcement has their duty under federal law to restore my property that was stolen to me immediately. So, how long do you think it's going to take to produce an investigation in regards to the reports that I'm making in regards to federal violations of codes? Because I've waited about 2 weeks plus now, and it is the duty of law enforcement to investigate these alleged criminal matters and immediately restore me to my property upon finding that the factual evidence is accurate, and that's the sole duty of every officer I've attempted to bridge the gap with thus far, even the last one being the state trooper. And I want to make you aware that it is your duty to investigate these crimes that I'm reporting on. Notice that I've provided felonies to you. It is your duty to investigate these. If you determine that that wasn't taken in accordance with the law, you have the duty to immediately restore me to my property. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but at the same time, I'm telling you that that is law. And if you can double check that, it might be an expedited way for this to just get in the books, because the time it's been taking for a formal investigation to unfold, I've been refused at every level so far, and knowing that the state police are paid out at the same level that our state attorney is, I think I have the right to potentially take this to the U.S. attorney. So, with that being said, that's your job, dude. And I'm requesting that you do your job. If I'm wrong, please tell me otherwise. But until you can tell me otherwise, I'm telling you that that is your duty.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your opinion, and so you've done all the right things. You called the local law enforcement; they weren't able to resolve it. Called the state police; that wasn't able to resolve it. Called the FBI. Like said,
here's the thing: it's not that they're able to resolve it. It's that I'm producing now, showing information of a conspiracy to protect criminals and further other law enforcement that are committing crimes against me. I said this was a spiral. So I didn't just start, documenting these things from day one of the RV. I knew what I had to do there. But when these officials failed to do their job in their official capacity, then it became the spiral out of control, and me began to charge these officials. So, or wanting to produce the allegations to lead towards charges of these officials. So, with that being said, I've done everything I could as a citizen, and there has been no law enforcement, no federal agent so far that says, well, I see what you're saying here, and we're going to investigate this. So this is basically subversive activity that I've named before in regards to these agents' behaviors locally. And I just want my property back, and I want law enforcement, whether it be local, state, or federal, to do their job. It's not a civil matter, sir. And as you can see, the information that I've laid at your disposal furnishes all the information that proves that it's not a civil matter. This is far from a civil matter. And with all these federal crimes being violated, I am tired of officials practicing law unlicensed telling me that I need to go to civil court. Because these officials are being willfully blind, not doing their duty to investigate the information that I've thoroughly investigated, that I've presented to them.
I think maybe, I think the lawyers are next to that, man.
No, sir. See, in regards to these federal crimes, you're wrong. You're offering me legal advice. I'm telling you, I'm not going to argue, man. I'm saying, I get it. I totally get it. But I'm furnishing federal crime. You don't take.
We're the FBI. We have to prioritize the things we investigate. We don't have an unlimited amount of resources.
Oh, I get it.
And it's to prioritize. We go all the way from terrorists to spies to drug dealers.
Yes, sir.
Dirty cops. We have to prioritize. We don't have unlimited resources.
So what resources do you have to investigate law enforcement? What resources do you currently have to investigate town police, sheriffs, and troopers? Do you have resources dedicated to investigate criminal mischief by law enforcement?
Some corruption is a violation. I just don't know. I don't work that matter. I have no idea how many cases they have.
Okay.
Everything's prioritized.
So
all I can do is
telling.
I know this isn't the answer you want to hear, Michael, but I can write this up, put it in the system, and see if somebody working the matter thinks it rises to the level.
Okay, because if not, I'm taking it to on up the chain with the attorneys and introducing this to the court. But I did want to tell you, your opinion on how I should go get an attorney isn't accurate in nature. Because of the nature of the crimes that I'm reporting, I am handed a prosecutor. I do not hire anybody. One is provided for me given the nature of these crimes. Therefore, I need not do what you offered your opinion for me to do because of the nature of these crimes. I'm handed a prosecutor upon the investigation. So when this gets investigated and they say, oh shit, these are federal crimes, all these officers are breaking the law, abduction, racketeering, conspiracy to cover up crimes and protect the criminal parties. These are serious allegations, sir, and I feel like, with what you're saying about your dedicated resources being limited, I feel like this isn't so much an important matter from what you're conveying to me.
No, I didn't mean to. I guess for it to come off that way. All I can do is I can write this up, put it in our system, and somebody will have to take a look at it, determine whether or not it needs to go further. And I have no idea about that. I'm just
okay.
A street level agent.
And that's why I've furnished everything, all the codes to you, and then read through the reports, because I see that you are aware that I've put in time and effort, because this is a major deal to me. I had been maliciously prosecuted in my past, as I stated, which I want to continue investigation and offer information in regards to those crimes against me federally. Because in the past with these malicious prosecutions, I've never been restored to my property, and I've never had restitution made. I've taken a complete loss as they've patted me on the back and said, "Oh, we're sorry, you're innocent, you're free to go now, get out of the system, bye." So here's what I'm doing, sir. The justice system has wanted me so bad with malicious prosecutions. Take this as a form of peaceful protest. I'm handcuffing myself to the justice system, and now I'm calling the system out on their crimes against me. Y'all wanted me so bad, now you got me. So that's what's going on. I've had enough with this. Every step in my life has been deterred by malicious prosecutions, putting a constraint on me to walk a path I never wanted to choose to walk. Now that I've studied for this test, sir, I couldn't be more proud in the work that I've done to be able to furnish it as such. And the criminal matters, the felony information that I've provided to you, it is your job to investigate the nature of these crimes that I'm alleging have occurred. Whether it's not you and you're just like a dispatch doing administrative work, I really refuse to believe that, because of me reporting the crimes directly, felony, federal crimes directly to you. You have a duty. And with that being said, it is your duty also to investigate the information. And if you find in your investigation that I am correct in nature, then it is your job to restore me to my property immediately. So if that doesn't happen, I don't know. I wish that to happen, because I don't want anything to happen in regards to failing to do duties under color of law. And with all the subversive behavior I've endured so far, I would think you take heed to that, showing that this is a conspiracy to clearly cover up crimes and retaliate against a victim, witness, and informant who I am protected under the Crimes Victims' Rights Act, the RICO Act, and the KKK Act. And I've given you all this information to lay it out clearly, so that way you don't have much work to do for your investigative nature and getting information. It's all provided. You can line it up with what you find on the opposite end investigating the other parties. I do know that everything I've submitted to you and other officials and attempted to submit to our Commonwealth Attorney, everything I am swearing to, that everything is accurate and truthful and honest. I'm going to let you know that when I found the trooper to refuse the investigation, I said, "Sir, you're claiming I wasn't in accordance with the law to permit the tow, but you're not telling me the law that I was in violation of that would accommodate these people to remove me." I said, "The very same statutes that you're going to have to look up to determine I was in violation are the same statutes that I'm furnishing to him that further prove that they were not in violation of the law and I was following the law, not being notified, and that this is a criminal matter." So he failed to do his investigative duties, and I believe that the nature of his conducting himself in office is subversive behavior, also conspiring to cover up these crimes. And if I didn't have it so well prepared and meticulous to be presented in its nature, I'm sure you've heard people talk like chickens with their heads cut off, sir, and that's not me today. I have done my diligent duty to research and investigate these crimes, and I am very proud of myself because, like I said, I started hitting the books years ago when malicious prosecutions were thrown at my feet, and here we are again. One with another. This is the second retaliatory malicious prosecution brought on by a state. So I'm doing this in a most professional manner. I don't have a job, but I'm making this my job, and I'm going to do the best job I can at it. And I will tell you, in my history of being maliciously prosecuted, I have taught 2 prosecutors hired to throw me in jail and burn me with the fullest extent under color of law. I have taught these individuals law, having one removed from prosecution given the nature of her behavior. So I'm learning. We're all learning. It's a learning process, but at the same time, there is law that is protecting me right now that I found, and I've conveyed these ideas, I'm going to say legal opinions of the law to you in regards to the statutory codes, federal codes, state codes, and the Crime Victims' Rights Act that states it is your express duty to investigate these crimes, and finding out that I'm innocent and they are criminal in nature that I'm reporting. It's your sole job and duty to restore me to my property. I'm sorry to say this is your job now, but law enforcement within the local town, county, and state jurisdiction, they refuse to, sir. And that's definitely an obstruction of justice. So I have no...
I will write this up and I will get it in our system. And I appreciate the work you put into it. You're very thorough. And that's all I can really tell you right now.
Can you tell me your process on putting it into the system in regards to maybe somebody pulling it? How does that work?
You write it up. It goes into our big, just like your Virginia State Police report and your local police reports, they all go into a system.
Okay.
And I mean, I wish I could tell you more, Michael, but I can't.
It's okay.
I can really tell you
it's okay.
I'm sorry I can't tell you more, and I'm sorry that you're going through this.
Don't be. I'm very proud that I am, because now I know better, and I know how to conduct myself and follow the guidance, the law that was laid out at my disposal. So don't apologize. I really don't need any pity in regards to the removal and taking of my property. But the law is there meant to protect me. And if those who are reporting on it don't do their duty and operate under the law, then that's a problem. And that's why I named, in that last criminal report I read off to you, it probably sounded like gibberish to you, but it is exactly what I'm referring to in regards to the situation that is unfolding, that is currently spiraling out of control in regards to all the officials and their crimes against me.
Right. All right. Well, I'll write it up, man. I appreciate your thoroughness, and like I said, I wish I could tell you more. All right.
Okay, so you don't have a time frame, you don't have an idea when anybody's going to follow up with me. I'm just left out right now. So that's it, I guess. You don't have any more info. I have one last question. In regards to the U.S. Marshals, I told you that I was going to potentially reach out to a marshal to investigate. At what level of authority are they? And what jurisdiction?
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know. From what the marshals, they deal with the courts and prisoners and things. So, I mean, I don't want to send you on a wild goose chase. And,
no, I get it.
I know you don't want to hear it either, but, I mean, maybe, all I can say is I'm going to submit the report into our channels. And as far as going to other law enforcement entities or going to, talking to an attorney or whatever, I mean, that's up to you.
I'll be speaking with our state attorney for sure the moment she gives me the courtesy to return correspondence. And as far as other law enforcement, other than a United States Marshal, I've exhausted all law enforcement in our state. Knowing that I've reported federal crimes to the FBI and there's not a proactive process here to restore me with my stolen property, given the information I provided, I'm really concerned that crime scene that is currently there is going to be tampered with. You understand? So it's a major concern to me because that's a crime scene. Now, I'm not really, worried so much about my welfare. I'll be okay. However, I worry about, filing criminal charges against these parties because knowing that the state law enforcement refused to investigate, I can't take all this information I furnished to you. I cannot take this to a magistrate. A magistrate is refusing me because law enforcement has to investigate felonious crime. So is there any way you can dispatch an official, whether it be from the FBI or one that will do their duty and thoroughly investigate? Because nobody has put pen to paper, and I've told you that this is a conspiracy to deprive me of my property and my rights. So, would you might have a recommendation of somebody who maybe I can even go back down the chain of command with, since I've exhausted the whole chain of command and I'm recording these individuals failing to do their duties? Got anything to offer in regards to that idea? I need felony reports to be investigated, and I feel like with the nature of our system and that last report I read to you with the subversive activity of officials, I feel like my rights of due process are completely being butchered because there is no official investigating this crime. Currently, there isn't one. So, the question that I'm posing is, how long does one go without a crime being investigated that's felonious and federal in nature? And it's troublesome to the average person to think that one could exhaust all the alternatives that they must go through to receive due process. So I've exhausted all my resources, but in regards to the law now, I'm still within it and following it, but officials are not doing their duties to restore me and to investigate this and to restore me to my property. If I was illegally parked and I was outside of the realm of what the law is, I would not have picked up the phone to begin to file a criminal report. I would have got my money and I would have engaged in a bailout of my property, because that would be a legally binding contract. But it's not, because they didn't follow the law and they've committed racketeering crimes against me, attempting extortion. So I've exhausted all the officials and I have these juicy criminal reports here, but I don't have an official that's actively investigating. And I got to admit, I'm not really happy about that one, because as you see, I'm being deprived of my property, and with the way our system is set up, there is no due process for me right now. Do you understand that? For me, my right to due process is continuously violated, still potentially, but not limited to up until this point. If there is no investigation by you, whom I've filed these felony informations with, then it's just a violation of my due process. And like I said, it's your job to investigate, and upon finding out that if I'm right, it is your duty to immediately restore me to my property. That is your job. I'm not making that up. That is coming out of the books. I've read that, and I'm familiar with it. That's why I'm approaching the situation as professionally as I can to ensure that people are doing their jobs and duties under color of law that they are operating under, to respect citizens' rights. And it's a major deal that I've exhausted everybody, and there's nobody investigating actively right now, and it's very sad. And this is happening all over. You need to go to civil court, or you should hire an attorney or talk to an attorney in regards to people producing felonious information. This is not limited and isolated to me, which is why I've produced these reports to you in regards, because I felt like some things need to be clarified with agents operating under the blue line of silence. It's subversive activity by these officials and conspiracy to deprive us of our rights. And this is what I'm conveying to you as a last statement, that is occurring, and I'm alleging that is a crime being committed. And that's all I have to say, man. I do appreciate your hour and a half that you've given me, and I want to know now, one last thing, sorry. These operators that are employed, that you referred to, is there any way to contact a supervisor to produce information in regards to how they've conducted themselves in their offices as administrative assistants? Because of me being hung up on and me trying to bridge this gap with this information, I don't feel that anybody producing information such as this should ever have to be hung up on again by these people.
I do not, and I apologize if it was unprofessional experience, but I don't. And like I said, I'm going to write this up, and it will be documented, but Michael, I'll give you an hour and a half. I got to go.
Absolutely. Can you give me your information if I needed to follow up with more reports to you directly so you can add this together?
Yeah, just Special Agent Daniel, and it's FBI Richmond is 806-261-1044.
1044. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and reach out to a marshal and see if he has interest in felony crime that I'm offering to him, because I want the immediate restoration of my property upon investigation, knowing that I'm within the law. So that I am attempting, because it is a crime scene and these people can tamper with evidence, and I suspect them to be doing it considering the subversive behavior of law enforcement. So Mr. Daniel, thank you for your time today, and thank you for taking all this information. Do you have an email address to which I can submit this information in writing to you?
No, I don't need that right yet.
Okay. I'm assuming you've recorded the call and.
You can take a note. And,
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, again, man, I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you more, but I can't. And I wish you all the best. And I hope you stay safe with all this crazy virus stuff.
The way you leave this call ended, man, it makes me feel like you're not going to be doing your job, respecting my rights. But anyway, I appreciate it, and I hope that you do your job and do help me with the restoration of my property. So thank you very much, Mr. Daniel.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.